On our newscast tonight, the rival parties make last-ditch efforts to resolve their differences and normalize parliamentary affairs. But have they made any progress so far? The massive pro-democracy demonstrations in Hong Kong picks up momentum with a growing number of people joining in and forcing some banks and businesses to close. Even without archery, there's no golden draft for the home team. Korea continues to maintain second place in medal tally by hauling in more golds in day 11 of the Asian Games. For these and more, stay with us.
Hello and welcome to Early Edition at 6. It's Tuesday, September 30th here in Korea. Live from Seoul, I'm Laah Hyun-kyung.
And I'm Daniel Choy. Thank you for joining us. Over at the National Assembly, a plenary session was scheduled to resume about 4 hours ago, but the Assembly Speaker has decided to postpone it.
Well, ruling party lawmakers continue to wait for word that the session is beginning. For details, we connect to our Ji Myung-kil, who is standing by at the National Assembly. So, Myung-kil, how's the atmosphere over there now?
Hello, Daniel and Hyun-kyung. It has been 4 hours since Assembly Speaker Chung Ui-hwa received a request from the main opposition party asking that the plenary session be postponed. Chung decided to honor that request, but the main opposition party has yet to make a statement about where they stand right now. We're hearing that the hardliners within the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy are refusing to take part in today's plenary session, while moderate lawmakers are considering attending. The opposition party has been boycotting parliamentary proceedings, upset about the lack of concessions over the Seoul ferry bill that would set up an investigation into April's ferry disaster. Although the Assembly Speaker has delayed the session, he has said that the ruling party will convene regardless of whether the opposition party is present. When they do, they will get right to work on passing some 90 draft bills. Chung, in remarks this afternoon, thanked the ruling party's lawmakers for their patience and also asked that they not venture far from the National Assembly.
Okay, Myung-kil, we also hear that the ruling Assembly party's leaders are meeting at the moment. Do you have any news on that?
Yes, Daniel. Just an hour ago, ruling Plenary Party Chairman Kim Moo-sung and Seoul leader Lee Won-gu were seen talking within the plenary hall with 4 other lawmakers. They are currently holding a closed-door meeting presumed to be on matters related to normalizing parliamentary affairs and the results of the trilateral meeting that took place earlier in the day. At the trilateral meeting, the family representative refused to elaborate on the specifics of what they requested during those talks, but it is believed they gave main opposition party leader Park Young-sun the authority to negotiate with the ruling party over the newly revised bill. During the meeting, one of the representatives for the student victims' families of the Seoul disaster asked that the trilateral meeting be expanded to include a representative that would speak on behalf of the victims who did not come from Tanon High School. No word on whether that request was accepted. I will be back throughout the evening with more updates. This is Ji Myung-kil reporting live from the National Assembly.
All right, thank you very much, Myung-kil there. And it looks like we will have more developments coming in as the night progresses. While that political impasse continued at the National Assembly throughout the day, there were fresh concerns about another ferry accident earlier in the day, or in the morning, rather.
Right. A ferry ran aground in waters of Korea's southwestern island this Tuesday morning. The 104 passengers and 5 crew members that were aboard the ship were rescued safely, and that's the important part. It reportedly struck a rock in waters near Hongdo Island in Jeollanam-do province at around 9 a.m.
No, that's not far from April's ferry sinking site, which claimed more than 300 lives. As for today's accident, the Coast Guard said everyone was evacuated from the ferry in 20 minutes and that they were taken to a nearby port on the island. The exact cause of the accident is still under investigation. And moving on, Washington has declined to comment on rumors of a military coup in North Korea. U.S. State Department spokesperson Jen Psaki said she has seen the reports, but went on to say she could neither confirm nor deny them. With North Korean leader Kim Jong-un not being seen in public for about a month now, there are wild rumors circulating. One is that Kim had been arrested following a coup. Another is that he has been hospitalized after undergoing surgery on his leg. Recent video footage released by the North showed the young leader walking with a limp. And a new report shows that political instability in North Korea worsened last year. The World Bank's latest edition of its worldwide governance indicators says North Korea is among the nations in worst shape when it comes to political stability and absence of violence. The index saw a significant drop for the first time since 2010. Watchers say political variables such as the execution of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's uncle Chang Song-taek contributed a lot to the drop. Addressing the many human rights issues in Asia, including Japan's wartime sexual enslavement of women, Korea's top judge has stressed the need to set up a human rights court in Asia. Chief Justice Park Han-chul explained his vision to hundreds of judges from around the world. Our Kim Min-ji reports.
Around 350 people from some 100 countries have gathered in Seoul to attend the Congress of the World Conference on Constitutional Justice. Hosted by the Constitutional Court of Korea, the event is being held under the theme Constitutional Justice and Social Integration.
We need to pursue international standards and ensure universal human rights. We also need to think about the effects that ruling may have on international relations.
In a keynote address, Chief Justice Park Han-chul proposed the establishment of a special court in Asia that would deal with human rights issues. Indirectly referring to Japan's wartime sexual enslavement of women, he stressed the need for a regional court, saying that Asia had bore witness to human rights violation during times of war and that their sufferings continue to this day. Park noted the European Court of Human Rights as a potential model. He said the court brought integration and regional peace to the European Union. The court, which is comprised of 47 member states, was set up in 1959 by the European Convention on Human Rights. Park said when the Asian court is set up, it will bring about regional integration and give people more dignity. The 4-day conference will end on Wednesday with participants adopting a Seoul communique on the issues they discussed. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
We have just 4 more days until the Incheon Asian Games come to a close. For the latest, we turn live to Arirang's Song Ji-sun at the News Center.
Now, Ji-sun, here we have to start today's Asian Games updates with a young man who is getting more attention for his digits in his ID rather than his athletic prowess.
That's right, Daniel. We're talking about Park Sung-bin, who's still in middle school. He won gold in the men's optimum sailing event this Tuesday afternoon. Park received 16 penalties in 11 races, outpacing Malaysia's Muhammad Diaudin bin Rozaini, who had 31 penalties. Now, Park was born in the year 2000 and hasn't even turned 14 yet. His birthday comes a week after the Asian Games come to a close on Saturday. The up-and-rising star has been improving and getting stronger over the past couple of years after making his debut on the international stage. He placed second at the Asian Championships in Incheon earlier this year.
Not even 14 yet, and he's one of those people who make you wonder and look back on what you did at the age of 14, right?
Right.
So, Ji-sun, we also hear that there's a list of names available for this year's Asian Games MVP.
Right now, these finalists for the MVP prize. As we head into the finale of the games, the organizing committee announced the finalists for the Samsung MVP award. Now, Team Korea is represented by Korean foil fencer Nam Hyun-hee and judoka Kim Jae-bum. And also making the cut is the most decorated athlete in Incheon 2014, Japan's rising star swimmer Kosuke Hagino, who grabbed 7 medals, 4 of which were gold. Now, the organizing committee took into consideration the number of medals won, whether the athletes had won medals in 2 or more consecutive Asian Games, and whether new records were set when deciding on these finalists. Chinese badminton player Lin Dan was the winner in Gwangju 2010, and Korea's Park Tae-hwan received this award in Qatar Doha at his debut in the 2006 Asian Games.
Well, I hope it's too early for us to say this, but unfortunately, all good things must come to an end. We are talking about the upcoming closing ceremonies. Could you tell us a little bit more about that? Hopefully, more athletes involved than celebrities this time?
That's right, I'll have to agree on that. The executive producer for the opening and closing ceremony, film director Chang Jin, held a press conference on this Tuesday, saying the theme for the closing ceremony is Asia Will Remember Incheon. The performance will kick off at 7 p.m. with the 45 seconds of countdown, signifying the 45 different participating countries. Thousands of athletes who took part in this game will enter the stadium in a less formal manner than they did in the opening ceremony to enjoy the show throughout the 2.5 hours. And the game's flag will be handed over to host for the 2018 Games, which is Jakarta of Indonesia.
Now, we are already talking about the closing ceremony, but the games haven't come to a close yet, and there are some more events that we can look forward to tonight as well, right?
Right, and we'll have to start with the football, and it's the Korean men's team, and if they win the gold in men's football, it was the first time since the 1986 Asian Games that was hosted here in Seoul. And the two Koreas will play against each other for the gold if they win their semi-final matches tonight. North Korea is currently playing against Iraq, and their score stands at 0-0 as of this second half. South Korea will kick off their match against Thailand at 8 p.m. tonight, and the final for the men's football is set for 8 p.m. Thursday. And some medal events are in store for tonight in some contact and action sports. 4 medal events are set for wrestling in men's Greco-Roman and Taekwondo, which finally kicked off its competition with the round of 32 this morning. We got 4 gold medal matches, 2 for men and 2 for women. Also note that usually the organizers put the most popular and the anticipated events and the finals in the final days of the Asian Games, so do stay tuned for the result through this Friday, which is the last day of athletic competition.
Well, thank you for that, Jason. Yes, boys play wrestling or football, and more excitement coming up tonight. Thank you for those reports. We hope to have you bringing us more interesting updates.
One-day entry ban. 77.
Digging deeper, getting to the bottom of stories that impact your life. Talking with you on air and online. Connecting you with experts on the world's most pressing issues. News and current affairs at its best. With Laah Hyun-kyung and Daniel Choy.
Arirang News. Arirang News.
On Early Edition at 6.
On a different note, in Hong Kong, thousands of pro-democracy activists are not budging, still blocking major parts of the city. They are demanding universal suffrage, and reports coming out of Hong Kong say much of the city is shut down today as well. Our Connie Kim has more.
Speaking out for the first time since demonstrations flared up over the weekend, Hong Kong's leader called on protesters to immediately end the rallies. C.Y. Leung, the country's chief executive, said China will not be backing down from its position on Hong Kong and that Beijing's decision falls under the basic law of one person, one vote. But pro-democracy demonstrators appear to be standing firm and have now demanded that Leung step down. Tuesday's protests have been relatively calm following the police crackdown Sunday, in which police used pepper spray and tear gas on the protesters. Schools and businesses around the government complex remain closed as thousands block the commercial district of Causeway Bay to Central's east and across the harbor to Kowloon's Mongkok. Over 50 people have been injured since the protests flared up on Saturday. Demonstrators are demanding universal suffrage in Hong Kong's 2017 elections and that Beijing abandon its plan to vet candidates for the post of chief executive.
We have a simple message, is that we just want a democracy and a fair voting of choosing our chief executive of Hong Kong.
Up until now, Beijing had been nominating the chief executive, and China was quick to warn other nations against supporting what it calls illegal rallies.
We hope that related nations show a considerate stance regarding the protest in Hong Kong and do not send out a wrong message to protesters.
However, the U.S. and Britain have both said the demonstrators' rights should be protected and the people of Hong Kong should be granted universal suffrage. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
The sudden eruption of Mount Ontake in Japan over the weekend has reminded people that the island nation has more than 100 live volcanoes. Mount Ontake is getting people worried that the country's biggest mountain, Mount Fuji, may be ready to blow for the first time in hundreds of years. Our Son Jung-in tells us more.
Mount Fuji is the highest point on the Japanese archipelago, rising 700 meters taller than Mount Ontake. Located not far from major cities like Tokyo and Yokohama, the mountain has recently been showing some signs that an eruption may be coming, including sinking roads and receding lake waters in the area. Mount Fuji has discharged lava at least 43 times in the past 2,000 years. It erupts on average every 50 years, but has stayed ominously silent for the last 300. A recent research found that the 9.0 magnitude earthquake in Japan's east in 2011 increased the pressure beneath the volcanic mountain. If Mount Fuji were to erupt, experts warn of extensive damage. It could spell disaster for Shizuoka Prefecture, with more than 750,000 residents left homeless. The harmful ash discharge could also damage the health of 12 million people residing in Tokyo and other metropolitan areas within the volcano's reach. Another problem lies in the evacuation system, or lack thereof. According to a government study, 80% of areas threatened by the effects of a volcanic eruption have no viable evacuation plan. With thousands of hikers visiting Mount Fuji every day, concerns are rising that Japan should start preparing now before it's too late. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
And for the first time since April's ferry disaster dampened consumer spending, majority of Korean businessmen are optimistic that they have better days ahead. But some say it's still too early to say the economy is back on track toward full recovery. Our Kim Ji-yeon has more.
Many Korean companies believe the Korean economy has turned the corner, and they expect the government's expansionary policies and a U.S. recovery to improve their business in coming months. A survey of 600 companies by the Federation of Korean Industries shows that the Business Survey Index for October exceeded the 100 mark for the first time in 5 months. A figure over 100 means that optimists outnumber pessimists over economic conditions. The positive sentiment was shared among manufacturers. The Bank of Korea says its Business Survey Index of manufacturing companies edged up to 74 in September. That's 2 points higher than the previous month, when the level was its lowest in 13 months. But the country's industrial output dropped by 0.6% in August from the previous month, switching to negative growth for the first time in 3 months. Statistics Korea attributes this to the drop in the number of working days due to summer vacations and a growing number of labor strikes in the automobile sector. An analyst from Korea Institute of Finance describes the discrepancy between the positive economic sentiment and the decline in industrial output.
It takes more than 1 or 2 months to reflect the changes in government policy and real economic indicators, but they're expected to improve in September due to a steady increase in exports and consumer sentiment.
The Federation of Korean Industries, however, cautions that it's too early to say that the Korean economy is on the steady path to recovery. It says the nation needs to overcome challenges posed by strengthening of the Korean won, the weakening Japanese yen, lackluster private consumption, and a slump in exports to China. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
The Korean smartphone market is widely known to be a hard nut to crack, mostly because of Samsung's presence and Korea's unique mobile telecommunications structure. But those factors are apparently not stopping foreign manufacturers, including China's Huawei, from trying. Hwang Ji-hye has the details.
Those in Korea trying to buy a new smartphone now have one more option. That is the X3 model from Chinese budget smartphone manufacturer Huawei Technologies, which hit local shelves on Tuesday. Huawei expects to lure Korean consumers with its affordably priced handsets, which are up to $400 cheaper than local brands like Samsung Electronics. Korea's smartphone market is considered difficult to break into, with most citizens loyal to Samsung and its domestic rival.
Currently, the Korean tech giant controls around 60% of the local market, followed by LG Electronics. Apple, one of the world's most popular smartphone makers, holds below 10% of the local share. It's no surprise then that US-based Motorola gave up on the Korean market in 2012, while Taiwan's HTC also folded its Korean business in the same year. But it's not just Huawei that's aiming to take on the Korean smartphone market. Sony of Japan recently unveiled its high-end Xperia Z3 smartphone, which also boasts a cheaper price tag compared to local brands, pointing to even stiffer competition among local and foreign players. Hwang Jie, Arirang News.
On a lighter note, if you ask foreigners visiting Korea what they find beautiful, one of the things that never fails to be mentioned is Korea's porcelain work. The National Museum of Korea has opened a new exhibition centered around just that, and our Im Hyun-hee takes us there.
A beautiful blue dragon, sprawled across the body of a delicate white porcelain jar. During the Joseon Dynasty, porcelain work saw many transformations, including the use of cobalt blue glaze laid against the pure white, resulting in these blue and white porcelain works, also known as Chunghwa porcelain.
This exhibition features Joseon Dynasty celadon and porcelain, highlighting its value to Korea's history. Now more can discover the beauty of Korean Chunghwa porcelain.
It's a centuries-old technique that was seen across the Asian continent, but Korea developed a style of its own. One of the most valuable works on display is a Chunghwa porcelain lidded jar with a plum and bamboo design. The national treasure shows the Korean artist's unique use of the pure empty space, creating more simplistic masterpiece right on the surface of the jar. But what makes these works so valuable is that the cobalt blue had to be imported from Islamic countries, so access to the craft was extremely rare. Only the country's best craftsmen were given the opportunity to use the blue coloring, making it all the more popular with the royalty and the wealthy.
During the mid to late 18th century, Chunghwa porcelain was enjoyed by the aristocrat class, characterized by the simplistic paintings of the four gracious plants, landscapes, animals, and patterns.
The era of elegant Chunghwa porcelain was short-lived, as Korea endured the Japanese invasion. But each graceful brushstroke preserved on these porcelain jars is a priceless piece of Korea's history. Im Hyun-hee, Arirang News.
Hello and welcome everyone. I'm Kim Bo-kyung with your weather forecast. At the moment, the central regions are enjoying breezy and sunny conditions while sporadic sprinkles continue to drop in some places. Those on the eastern coast are looking at up to 20 millimeters while it's about 5 millimeters elsewhere. Now, Wednesday is shaping up to be a cool autumn day with mostly clear skies nationwide. The atmosphere has cooled, leading to some brisk air, so make sure to grab a jacket on your ways out. Other than that, another round of autumn rain, it's on its way this Thursday. Conditions over in Incheon look to be perfect for outdoor matches, including Team Korea's semifinal football match against Thailand, which is scheduled to start at 8 p.m. Korea time. With that in mind, let's take a closer look at Wednesday's readings. Seoul, Daegu, and Busan make it to 24, Gwangju 25. On to other places. Daejeon and Daejeon reach 24, Jeju 23, Dokdo 18, Mangkumgang 13. That's your weather for Korea, and we leave you with the international weather.
And now we are just getting reports in that the National Assembly Secretariat has announced that the plenary session will begin at 7 p.m. Korea time. That's about 30 minutes from now, and we will have more updates available on our next newscast at 8 p.m. Korea time. And that brings us to the end of this edition of our newscast. Thank you for watching, and this has been Laah Hyun-kyung.
And I'm Daniel Choy. We'll be back with more tomorrow, same time, same place.